Hello friends, I just put on 6 pounds, mostly of muscle, in my 6-month build phase. Built some boulder shoulders, built some booty, built some other muscle. The first 3 months I recomped, and I'll explain why I was able to do that. In the last 3 months was really focused on building new muscle. I worked up to 2,400 calories, 350 grams of carbs, and I'm only 5'1". So I'll explain that as well. Now I'm primed nicely for a calorie deficit phase, but first in today's episode, I'm breaking down the big changes I made, my macros, some challenges I ran into. So let's get into it. But first, I've got to let you know, Create Your Shape is currently open for enrollment. So it is open if you're listening to this live from April or until April 20th, and we get started May 12th. So Create Your Shape is my 4-month nutrition coaching program for ladies who lift weights and want to look like they lift weights. If you are working out, if you're lifting weights, your physique should represent it. If not, you are just missing the nutrition strategy for ladies who lift weights. That's exactly what you'll learn and implement with a custom plan and coaching, weekly reviews to ensure that you build muscle and decrease body fat and have that physique that represents the work you're putting in. You can get signed up now and join us at jennythenutritionist.com/create-your-shape. And I've also added the link in the show notes. So something like building muscle is part of the strategy that we implement in Create Your Shape. So my example here will give you just a little taste of what that may look like. So I'm so proud of this 6-month build phase. Like, it was my first proper long-term build, and I just love being able to strategically create the outline of my shape, be able to place curves where I want them. I also love seeing what I'm capable of and feeling like an athlete and feeling like I've got a purpose with my nutrition in my training, and I love progressing and every day moving the needle closer. It's just such a nice feeling. And then it feels so good to be accomplished a phase and go into another phase. So I've been training for a long time, and you might be wondering, okay, what did you change to build all this muscle? You've already been training for a long time. You've already been lifting weights for a long time. What was the difference? Really, the two big differences were mental. And the first one is I treated this build phase with the same commitment I treated a deficit phase or a calorie deficit phase, like a cut phase, right? I tracked my macros for 6 months with the intention of eating enough, right? I followed a specific daily structure of not only macros, but daily structure of when I was eating my food and how I was eating it and how I was placing things before, during, and after my workout, the types of food I was eating. I really followed my nutrient timing and my meals in my meal plan. And I say meal plan because I did have different foods, but really it's detailed. It's not just randomly hit your macros, dirty bulk. I was following a daily structure and eating really intentionally during this time, and I was committed to it. So that's the first thing, the level of commitment with my nutrition. The second was I completely up-leveled my training commitment. So I've always loved working out. I've always loved lifting weights, but I treated every workout like it was a competition. I went to failure almost every single workout and every single exercise and truly learned what that means. So going to failure prior to this, I have done when I felt like it, right? Or it's oh, I'm hitting a PR today. But no, during this 6 months, it was every single time, whether I felt good or not, whether I got sleep or not, or whether I was in a bad mood or not, it didn't matter. And actually, I ended up loving that, and it gave me so much more purpose. And it was a huge mindset shift to be oh, wow, I am really capable of so much more than I thought I was. And I thought I trained heavy or hard before, and it's just nothing compared to now, what I do now. And at first it was challenging, but then now it's my new standard. And I kind of feel like anything else is kind of unacceptable unless I'm intentionally, for part of the strategy, not training that at that intensity or that level. I tracked every single workout. So I've got my logs. So I went into every single workout knowing what I needed to hit to progress. It wasn't just what weights do I want to use today? I usually use this weight, so I'll just use it again. No, it was intentional. I knew exactly how many reps I needed to hit. I knew the weight I needed to hit. It was like I was training with intent, right? Even if I wasn't feeling like it. I wasn't missing sessions, which, like I've mentioned before, like I've always been consistent with training and I love training. But if I missed a workout here and there, it didn't really matter, it felt like. But in this training block, I kind of viewed each training session as how much muscle I wanted to build. So for example, if I could build like a pound of muscle per month, then each training block was, let's say I trained 5 times. I'm just going to do math. Okay, let's say 1 pound per month, and I trained 5 times per week. So I trained 20 times per week. So 1 pound divided by 20 sessions, there we go. That is 0.05 pounds per session that I needed to hit in order to build that 1 pound of muscle per month. So in order to do that, I needed to progress in that session. So I definitely wasn't going to miss that session, or I'd literally be missing out on those gains. And then I wasn't going to like half-ass or not give it like 110% in that session, or I would miss out on those gains. So I didn't view it as like a workout. I viewed it as one part of like the building block that was going to get me to that 1 pound of muscle gain per month. So I wasn't missing sessions, but I also wasn't rushing sessions. So before maybe, I'm tight on time, I've got work, or I've got a call, or I've got a meetup, I'll just like quickly go to the gym and just kind of check the box. No, that was not happening, right? Because I was prioritizing training. I wasn't rushing warm-ups. I was making sure that I was warmed up enough, like 1, 2, maybe even 3 warm-up sets. And so I knew like, okay, yeah, now I'm ready. My muscles fully activated, engaged, and ready to go into this working set. Peri-workout nutrition, I just talked about it. I was making sure I was getting in my meal before training because I made such a big difference on how well I was going to perform in that training session. So training was a priority, and I said no to anything that interfered with that. So that was the second part. I completely up-leveled my training commitment, and it wasn't that I was training more, it was the intention behind that commitment and the fine-tunedness of how I was training. All right, and I don't mean how of like doing something different. I mean like just fine-tuning and really being intentional with the details. So with every up level, there's a list of ways that you can fine-tune your training and nutrition to get more out of the same effort. So once you're already consistently lifting, 4 or 5 days per week, you don't need to lift more times or dial in and eat less and less and less, right? It is just fine-tuning to get more out of that same amount of effort. So it's the consistency with this level of detail that makes physique changes and takes your shape to that next level. So before I started the 6-month build phase, I had to mentally get myself on board with doing everything that it would take to get to my next level. And at first, it was hard. Right, I had to be like, oh boy, here we go again. Like, I would be nervous for leg days because they would be painful, right? They're challenging and they're painful. And I had to do it no matter what because I made it kind of non-negotiable beforehand and I mentally like got myself on board for it. And now it feels second nature. They still feel like, I still get nervous for leg days, but it's like, okay, it's just part of the process. It's okay. And honestly, this is what I'm most proud of, my up level when it comes to my training effort in my nutrition in the, what they call it, the off season or in my build phase. So let me recap the math and science behind what I implemented and what that looked like. So during the 6-month build phase. So month 1 to 3 was a recomp. So I started at 1,800 calories and worked up to 2,300 calories, of course, with specific macros. So over this 3 months, that was the like path I took, and paired that with this intentional training, like fine tuning mindset. And I would estimate I gained about 3 pounds of muscle and decreased about 3 pounds of body fat. And to give you some context, I'm 5'1". I started at 113.5 pounds. And for my international friends, that's 155 centimeters and 51.5 kilograms. So I believed I could recomp because I easily regained old muscle. So generally with trained individuals or experienced lifters, it's a lot harder to recomp and build muscle and decrease body fat at the same time unless you have more wiggle room to work with. So if you're a newer lifter, you can more easily gain muscle, and so it's easy to do both at the same time. But if you're an experienced lifter, you generally can't gain new muscle as easily. Where you can recomp is if you, let's say, have a lot of body fat to lose. That makes it easier to recomp. Or if you change something that is pretty impactful, like optimizing your nutrition or changing how you train and the intensity of training, that might also allow you to recomp. Another way that you can recomp is if you were in like my situation where I had, if you remember last year, I had some hormone issues where I had to take a long break from training and I lost a decent amount of muscle. And so it is way more easy to regain old muscle. And so I think I was able to do that and recomp during this time frame. So I think there's a lot of factors that happen, and I definitely think recomping is possible even if you are an experienced lifter because of the things I just mentioned. I do think that it is less likely to happen and not as optimal, but it is doable. That could probably be a whole episode. Maybe it will be. All right, so next, after that recomp, which if you go to my Instagram, I've just posted these photos so you can see them. Jenny the Nutritionist is my Instagram. And if you come from the podcast, definitely let me know so I can know that you're looking at it and how you're taking this information while reviewing the photos. But you can see my photos look better, right? They look a lot better just from a recomp because when you build muscle and decrease body fat, that's like such a great combo. So then from there, the last 3 months of the build phase, I continued up. I increased my calories. And when I say I was working with a coach. I always think it's valuable when you're trying to do something new and different to work with a coach and work with somebody who is going to see it from outside of your perspective. And so I'm always hiring different coaches. I want to learn for myself. I want outside opinions. And that could be a whole nother podcast because I see a lot of like do-it-yourself people, and I used to be one of those too. And then I would just struggle and spin my wheels where you can get things so much faster when you hire an expert, and it's their job to make your progress happen. So anyway, going back to the last 3 months of my build phase, I worked up to, or I essentially was at 2,400 calories the entire time, about 130 grams of protein, 350 grams of carbs, and 50 grams of fat. And this was a surplus for me, meaning I was eating more than I was burning per day. I would estimate I was probably burning 2,200, maybe closer to 2,300. So I was at about 100 calorie surplus, maybe a little bit more. And during this time, I would estimate I gained another 2 pounds of muscle and about 1 pound of body fat. So I worked up to about 117 pounds or 53 kilograms. So to most efficiently build new muscle, that's in my scenario of an experienced lifter who's already pretty lean, I was eating in a calorie surplus to gain new muscle as quickly as possible. And in this scenario, some body fat in small amounts is going to come along with that. I knew that. It's part of it, right? But I was willing to do that in order to gain new muscle faster. So all of these numbers that I'm sharing, the gaining of 2 pounds of muscle and 1 pound body fat, it's just based on my experience and knowledge in past DEXA scans and the changes that I felt in my body. And if you did the math, you would probably see that there's about 0.5 pounds unaccounted for. And I'm really not sure what that is. Maybe it's some body fat, or maybe it's just from an increase in food and water as my calories increased so much, like that's going to show up on the scale just as water in your body and food. So maybe that's part of it, but I'm definitely curious to what everyone thinks and if my estimates are accurate. And I put this on the Instagram post too, so definitely share if you have thoughts around it or your estimates and based on the photos too. So that's a kind of a summary, a recap of exactly what I implemented. And again, this is on the nutrition front, but I can't stress the details in the consistency enough, both on the nutrition and the training. So then from there, I ran into some challenges, and probably less than I expected because I mentally prepared myself for months ahead of this and really had to get myself on board to go to this next level. I think that's the biggest factor. But the challenges that I ran into were different than I was expecting. So the first is I really noticed impacts in my training from things that I didn't notice before. So let's say if my timing was off, where I typically had 3 meals before I trained and I only had 2 meals, I would really feel that in my workout. And then I would be a little bummed because then I couldn't hit my progressions or it skewed my data and I could really feel it in the gym. Or if I went out to dinner the night before and I had more oils and more fat and less carbs, and I could feel it the next day. So it was kind of interesting how I was picking up, just becoming more in tune with my body and more fine-tuned again with how nutrition and lifestyle factors impacted the training session. I remember before, a couple years ago when we were visiting my hometown in the States, where Aaron was like, you don't understand, when we travel, my training sessions are just not as good. And I remember being like, yeah, I kind of get that, but they're still probably like 80 to 90% as good. And then when I realized and had the experience of when training at this level of not having everything dialed in like normal, I'm like, oh yeah, it's so frustrating to not be like well prepared, well fueled, and training at different times, like just definitely has an impact. So that was one of them, the challenge I ran into. Not really challenge, it was kind of awareness, right? The next would be prioritizing training over social events. So it's so funny too, because I was thinking like, what exactly happened? I'm like, oh, my friends would want to train together, and I would be like, oh no, I want to train on my training program, and I want to use the equipment that's going to be most optimal, so I want to go to my gym, and I don't want to go to your home gym. So honestly, that wasn't a problem at all because my desire just shifted. So again, just a little bit of awareness. It's like I could do that if I wanted to, but I'm like, oh, I don't want to miss progressions on this workout. So again, that was like something I noticed and that I ran into. And then along with that would be alcohol. So if you would have asked me prior, like, oh, Jenny, do you drink? I'd be like, yeah, I drink, occasionally. It's definitely lessened over the years, but yeah, I like to have a margarita or, like to go out sometimes and have a couple drinks, whatever. But now, which honestly, I would say that, and then it would just like happen less and less and less because the desire has way decreased. But even during this 6 months time frame, I would be like, okay, like, oh, I'm going to get a drink this weekend. And then when it came down to it, I'd be out to dinner and I would just be thinking about like how hard I trained in the morning. And I knew that, when you're sleeping overnight, like that's when the protein synthesis was going to be like most optimal and the gains were going to be like, I was going to be making gains, and that the alcohol would definitely blunt that process. I was just like, I just don't want that. I just worked so hard for these gains. Like the drink isn't going to bring me more joy than the gains, the reward I'm going to get for that work I just put in. And so then I just wouldn't drink and I wouldn't even think about it. So that was again something that I just became more aware of during the process. The other two things would be getting enough carbs in while being gluten-free. So I've gone back and forth with being gluten-free or not over the years, and I definitely feel better without gluten and actually feel better without oats too. And so bread and oats were like my go-to fill-in carbs. Like if I ran out of something or if I just needed to get something in quick, I always had those on hand to be able to quickly just get in more carbs. And so when those were removed, it made it a lot more challenging because I was like, what do I do? Oh, I've got to cook rice. That's going to take so much more time. So that definitely made it more challenging, and I had to replace those, and gluten-free bread here at least does not taste as good, and it's so dry. So anyway, that was a challenge that I ran into. And then lastly, I would say the last challenge was probably the last month when I was noticing the body fat gains. I just felt thicker and fluffier, and I could see my mind was starting to go down the like, oh, just like don't really feel great. But then also I was like, okay, but let's redirect this. And that's when Latina Jenny started coming into play, where I was like joking with Erin that I'm in my Latina phase because I was getting curvy and I was just having fun with it. And so it was kind of fun, and it was fun because I'm definitely curvier across the board. But at the same time, I just feel a little fluffier than I like, even though I didn't really gain that much body fat. So just again, brought awareness to that, realized that it is part of it. And also, side note, makes me think that, oh, okay, if I do another build phase, which I likely will in my lifetime for sure, I would probably get leaner to begin with. So then I have more of a runway to gain body fat along with the new muscle. Okay, so I put all this up on my Instagram and kind of am expanding on it all here. And I got some questions that I wanted to answer. So someone commented and said, I'm 5'3", 116 pounds, and my TDEE calculators put my maintenance calories at 1,500 to 1,600 calories. I've done a ton of tracking, and my real life experience confirms the calculators. How does your tiny body handle so many calories? LOL. Okay, so maintenance calorie calculators are just not going to be like 100% accurate, and eating more increases your TDEE. So you can increase your total daily energy expenditure by eating more. That's one way you can do it. But other ways that increase your maintenance calories, or how much you're burning per day, which is the same as TDEE, is building muscle. That is a big one. As you build more muscle, it takes more energy for your body to maintain that muscle, therefore increasing your total maintenance per day. Eating more increases your total maintenance per day. Not only increasing your metabolism, but just the thermal effect of food. This is why I stress eat enough before going into a calorie deficit phase to prime your body, not only to feel better, to build muscle, but to prime your body before going into the deficit. So gaining muscle, right? Like how much muscle do you have? And then the next is how hard are you training? How heavy are you training? That is going to change how many calories you're burning per day too. So I would say those are the main ones. And then obviously your NEAT, your general activity factor, meaning how much are you moving throughout the day? Are you getting in walks, or are you just sitting on a desk all day long and then sitting on your couch all night long? Like that's going to change. I'm a fairly active person outside of my sitting at my desk job, like what you can see me doing right now. So that also influences that number. So definitely I would say most ladies who are lifting weights are burning around 1,800 calories per day. And then if you're lifting heavy, then that's going to be 2,000 plus per day. And if you eat more than that and feel like you're gaining weight, I would question, one, how heavy you're lifting, how much muscle do you have, all of that stuff. But then also, are you just gaining food, like weight? Because let's say you increase 100 grams of carbs, right? That's 100 grams more in your body that's going to show up on the scale. So that would just be like the food that's in your body. But also that's going to be, you're going to hold on to more water that with more carbs as well and more food as well. So that's also going to show up on the scale as water weight. So as I mentioned before, that 0.5 pounds like might have been just food and water weight. Same thing. If you increase your intake and think like, oh my gosh, I'm gaining weight, are you actually gaining body fat, or is it just food and water? Which this is why I track data points for my clients, and we intentionally track everything and track the trends to make sure that they are not gaining body fat as you increase your intake. All right, so that's the first question. The second question I got is if you could discuss recomp, i.e. experienced lifters can recomp, muscle gain and lose fat at the same time. They say that's only newbie gains and you have to focus on one or the other. So hopefully my explanation before clarified this, but I would say, yeah, to do it most optimally, you want to be doing one or the other. Now, for people who have 30 pounds or more of body fat to lose, then you've just got more wiggle room to work with, and therefore you likely can do both at the same time. Or if you are changing something drastically with your nutrition, then you can likely more easily do it. All the reasons I explained before, but if you're already experienced, if you're already pretty lean, and if you already are dialed in with your nutrition, then likely that won't happen. And then you're going to want to focus on building for a time frame and then focus on cutting for a time frame. So in Create Your Shape, we break it out over the 4 months to a build lifestyle phase, almost like a primer phase, and then a calorie deficit phase. So we split it out into 2 different sections. However, depending on your scenario and all the things I just listed, some of my ladies, they're not in a position where they're going to decrease body fat and gain muscle. They just may gain muscle at first. But some ladies, as we're feeding them more and they're getting the benefits, they're dialing in training and nutrition, they see muscle build in a decrease in body fat at the same time. And then when we go in the deficit phase, some of them, again, may still see both at the same time, or some may just decrease body fat. Depends where you're at. So if you have more questions, I want to hear from you. You can either send me a DM or comment on my Instagram at Jenny the Nutritionist, and I can expand on this. I might even do a Q&A episode on this. And then next up for me is a calorie deficit phase. So I talked about last week how I was preparing for this phase. So you can check that out on last week's episode. But that is what I've started. I'm 3 days in. It's already working very well. So I'm excited to just de-layer what feels like a layer of body fat and show off the new muscle that I've built. It's very, very exciting. I feel like now is like, it's just fun to continue to build off of the shape and getting better and better every year, every month. And it's all part of this bigger strategy. So I'm very excited for ladies who are joining the May class to just experience for themselves and have the strategy and understand the strategy of building muscle and decreasing body fat and recomping, and what are macros and why do they change, and then how do you apply this if you have a trip coming up or if you have a social event, right? And like really considering your life in this too, but really understand the science strategy behind it. Have a custom plan where it's all based on your information. Have a dashboard where we're tracking all of your key metrics. Having an expert in your corner and having all of the Create Your Shape ladies that you're coaching and going through this process with, so you truly understand it and have all of the support to change your body composition for now and for the long term. If this is you, then I invite you to join Create Your Shape. It's open for enrollment right now. And you can go to jennythenutritionist.com/create-your-shape or the link in the show notes, and I will see you inside. And I'll see you next week on the Create Your Shape podcast.